daring to do what God calls you to do. Christine, welcome to today's Issues.
Hey, it's a pleasure to be here.
Christine, let's just start at the very beginning, if we could. Human trafficking. I think there are probably some of our listeners who just don't even know what that term means. Tell us what it is. Tell us, how big a problem is this human trafficking around the world? What are we talking about here?
Well, yeah, we're talking about essentially slavery. I mean, human trafficking takes different forms. Either people are taken and sold for sex or sold for forced labor. And it's almost incomprehensible, really, to believe that in the 21st century this is still happening. But statistics say that, up to 27 million people today on the earth are the victims of human trafficking and slavery, and more than ever before in the history of humanity, which is just unbelievable that in our lifetime that would exist in the way that it does.
Now, how in the world did you, I know you talk about this in your book, and I want you to say something about your book, Undaunted. How did you come to be so deeply committed to this cause?
Well, I kind of, I guess in lots of ways, I was in an airport in Greece. I was going to do speak at a women's conference, and I saw all of these posters of these young women and children, and they just all said missing. And there was such a disproportionate amount of them that I asked the pastor that I was with, I said, what is all of this? And this was about 5 years ago, and they said to me, well, these are the alleged victims of human trafficking. And really, that was one of the first times I'd ever even heard the term, and couldn't believe that this really existed, that there were millions of young women and children trafficked and sold for sex in our lifetime. And I think because I'm Greek, my background is Greek. I was born in Australia. Obviously, that's what this accent is. And I just was flabbergasted that, and I came from a background in my own life where I had been sexually abused for many years, and I was left in a hospital unnamed and unwanted when I was born. I don't know who my biological mother and father are. And I think it hit very close to home. I thought, if I was born in a country that didn't have a rule of law and didn't have a great system for kids to be adopted out, then I quite possibly could have been one of those children in that region of the world that would be trafficked and would have been sold for sex or forced labor. And I think it hit home in such a real way for me that I could not ignore this. And as a follower of Christ, I thought, obviously, the thing on the planet that God values more than anything else are human beings. And what legacy could this be of the church, that we would allow more human beings to be trafficked and sold in our lifetime than ever before? I just thought we could not be silent anymore. We had to do something about this issue.
Christine, when you heard about the story up in Cleveland, which has, frankly, shocked the people of America, about the 3 missing women who held in slavery for a decade, what did you think? What did you feel? And tell us, is this happening in America more often than we think?
Oh, without a doubt, sir, without a doubt. Obviously, I was devastated. I was flying back. I had just, in this last week, I've been to Greece, to our shelters in Greece and in Bulgaria. And so I was in transit when that story came out. And, of course, I was devastated for those 3 girls, absolutely devastated to be kept in captivity for 10 years and raped and used in the way that they were. The truth is that is happening every day somewhere, and not just 1 or 2. We're talking hundreds of thousands of girls are kept like that against their will. And, I mean, obviously, just in the work that I'm involved in, we see it every single day. Girls being rescued, traffickers being prosecuted. It is just happening all the time. And right here in North America, it is happening far more frequently than any of us are aware of. Sometimes I think you can just get on with life and not even think that something like this is happening. But, it's a supply and demand issue, sir. And once you start to devalue human life, and once you start to devalue women, you just think that they're a sex object. And I think, obviously, the pornography industry helps to fuel this massively, because you can just objectify a woman and you suddenly begin to think that she's not a human being, she's not a daughter of the king, she's not created in the image of God. I was listening to the program just before you were interviewing me about abortion, and I was just kind of thinking, I'm so grateful that my mother had me, because I could have been one of those children as well. And I think the next step is, like, not only then do you kill a child in their mother's womb, if you still don't value human life, the next step is that you're just going to objectify a young woman or a child, and you're just going to use them for sex. So it all really comes back to the sanctity of human life and valuing a human being as being created in the image of God. And when you don't, you use a human being to make clothes just so that you can wear a cheaper garment. You don't care that someone is not being paid and held against their will, or being paid, $5 a year, just so that you can wear a cheaper T-shirt. I think at the end of the day, we all have to sit down and look at our own spending habits, perhaps look at our own kind of life. And I think a lot of times pornography obviously is such a toxic disease in our day and age, with our access to the internet and downloading stuff. And I think very often we think, if I'm just viewing pornography, it's got nothing to do with it. I'm not hurting someone. I'm not trafficking a human being. And I'm sitting there thinking, where do you think these images come from? And I have so many girls in our shelters in the Ukraine, in Greece, in Bulgaria, and these girls have been forced to do things against their will that someone else is going to click a button on an internet and watch and think they've had nothing to do with it. But in fact, they have fueled the industry that drives this whole issue. It's so evil at its root.
We're talking to Christine Caine. We're just about out of time for this segment. I'm Tim Wildman with Ray Pritchard. You're listening to the radio program Today's Issues. Christine's book is called Undaunted. Why should people buy the book, Christine?
Tim, I think what it does is awaken us to the fact that we cannot hide our head in the sand and pretend that there's not darkness in the world. And greater is he that is in us than he that is in the world. And it's time for the church to arise and shine the light of Christ into the darkness. I think for a long time we've been hiding. What Undaunted does, I think, is it just shows from my own life that God can take incredibly ordinary people and do extraordinary things with them. And if we understand that greater is the light that is in us than the darkness that is in the world around us, then we can use that light to dispel the darkness and shine the hope and the mercy and the grace and the love of God to a lost and a broken world. And we can do something about these great global injustices.
Christine, thanks for your time and your cause, and we wish you the best. And people can find your story and find out more about this at by purchasing your book, Undaunted. And do you have a website or?
I do. ChristineCaine.com, Tim. That's ChristineCaine.com.
C-A-I-N-E?
Yes.
Okay, Christine Caine, CAINE.com. And Christine, wish you the best. Thanks for being our guest. We appreciate it so much.
Thanks, Tim. Thanks so much.
Okay, bye-bye. Boy, they're related, those two issues, aren't they, Ray? Abortion and human trafficking?
If we're going to be pro-life, and Tim, I appreciate so much what you said. As long as God gives us life and breath, we're going to speak up for the unborn. But you know what? We're going to speak up for the born, too, for these children who are abused and for these women who are, she said 27 million, basically sex slaves around the world. Unbelievable. Yeah, these two issues go together.
Folks, we got a lot more to talk about. We're going to change topics when we get back. We're going to talk to a fellow by the name of Todd Long. Todd is got a new book out called The Conservative Comeback, How to Win the Battle for the Soul of America. We're going to talk to him about that. Also get his thoughts on these scandals involving the Obama administration, namely the IRS targeting conservative groups. We're going to talk about that. And then also, yesterday, it was learned that the Justice Department under Attorney General Eric Holder, what his knowledge was on this, I don't know, but had been privately getting phone records from several Associated Press reporters. We'll find out what that's about, too. We'll be back momentarily.